Hello and welcome to this video where we're taking a look at the black valve compressor, which is new with Cubase 13. So this is one of the plugins which is effectively spun out from the vocal chain plugin, but it's quite nice. It's probably the most sort of characterful plugin of the lot, and it's something I think you might want to use. Generally for me, compressors fall into two categories. They either do a functional job in terms of dynamic control, which is after all what they're kind of supposed to do, but then there's also the ones with character. This is definitely one of the ones with character. Personally, I like the way it works. It reacts in a fairly predictable and useful way. So let's just take a look. As you can see on screen, it's got fairly simple controls. We've got drive, gain, peak reduction, the big knob in the middle, dry and wet, which is always useful, and output. So really, in terms of its character, we've got these three controls and then some kind of useful functional controls here. We've got a gain reduction set of sort of LEDs, and then we've got input and output metering. So overall, reasonably simple, reasonably useful. In terms of presets, at the time of me recording this, there are 9 presets. So it's not, you're not overwhelmed with presets, but with only effectively 3 sort of character controls and a dry wet control, there's not going to be that much need for presets. I think you'll probably just get something close or just dial it in yourself, which is what we're going to take a look at. So firstly, I think all of these are from Steinberg's Media Bay, etc. So we'll just take a listen. Just got this loop in the background. Fairly standard, straightforward stuff, and the kind of thing I think you'd probably want to use this on. So firstly, let's just take a quick tour of the controls with this loop being our guide. The big knob in the middle, peak reduction. So this, you can hear the effect of this. If I turn this up, you'll hear what it's doing. So I think it's fair to say it's doing more than one thing as it's doing this. You know, there's multiple things happening as that does that, but it is reducing the peaks, and you can hear that pretty clearly. Now, this is one of those things where in the past you'd probably want to have this set up as a send because it's totally matching the signal, which sometimes is what you want, but often you want the original signal still to come through and give you some power as well, because this has a tendency to take particularly the attack away from things like kick. Because you'll see we haven't got any attack control, we've just got peak reduction. So straight away, let's dive into the dry wet control. I'm just going to turn this most of the way up. And then as we bring in some dry signal, you'll hear we get the attack back of the original signal. And you're getting the benefit of both. Now, I've not got this set up in a way which will compare like with like, so let's just quickly do that. Bring that down to about there. So we're getting roughly the same signal level, and then you can compare it, bypassing it. And we can hear that effect. I know it's not a perfect match in terms of level, but it's close that we're getting that real effect. And you can hear it's making a drastic difference, not just to the peaks, but you can hear everything else in the loop. It's getting a lot more character. It sounds a lot more interesting to me. And then we can turn up the gain and turn up the drive. So if we turn up the gain, we are turning up the gain after this section here, but I think driving into the compression. So we can, you see the compression reduction rather here is going up more. So we're really driving this hard. And then we've got drives, so we can add in some distortion as well. And again, these kind of compressors, really that's what they're about. They're about making this sound saturated and different and interesting and sound evocative of a time gone by with equipment none of us can ever afford. So if we listen to that versus so hopefully you can hear we've got a lot more character in there, but this isn't a compressor to be scared of. Some of them, I think you can end up really mashing your sound up and end up with a result that's worse, and you constantly need to be flicking between the original and your affected signal. Whereas with this, I think you can be much more confident it's okay, and you can always bring in your dry signal if you lose your attack, etc. So that's nice. Let's have a look at it on a few other things. So we're just going to run through a few things that I've found and a few uses while I've been playing around with this I think it's quite useful for. So starting here with the obligatory arm end break. So this is just the drum bus crush insert. Not sure I could say that too fast. It's exactly what you'd want from this kind of compressor. So we put it on. You can hear what that's doing to that. And this is going to be a plugin I'm probably going to use quite a lot actually, because it's just going to be useful. And also this kind of thing being included is great for me because it means I can send a mix which I'm doing to somebody else who's got Cubase 13 and it will just work and they won't have to buy or try and install something. I won't have to do mix downs, etc. So that makes life much easier. Let's take a look at this next one. So this is it on bass, which is another thing straight away I thought bass is going to be good for this. And one of the few presets that's on there is for bass. So here's the original sample. Again, this is just from Media Bay. And then with that on. I'll turn it off in the middle of the phrase. So I've tried to volume match this roughly. It could probably come down a bit more. But generally it's pretty good. And you can hear what that's doing. Again, nice use for that. I think this would work well on drum buses, which is one of the reasons they've said. Some of the presets are like that. But of course, a drum bus is effectively what you've got with your output of something like Groove Agent. So here I've got Groove Agent just playing a preset on one of the kits. So this is Groove Agent SE. So something, again, which nearly everybody's going to have with Cubase. So again, although we're driving this really hard, it's only a very slight bit of wet mix. It's only 25%. So again, I'll shut up. You can have a listen to it without and then with. Again, it's not night and day necessarily on that one, but listen to that closely on headphones. I think that's doing, again, it's just that nice vintage feel and flattening everything out, which is often what you want. Now, finally, a use which probably wouldn't typically always advocate, which is putting it on a group. So I've actually put it on a group of guitars, including the bass, which is the part of it that I normally would say, oh, don't do that. But actually, I found while I was playing around with this, it worked quite nicely. And often with, you know, certainly older studio setups, etc., you didn't have an infinite number of buses, and sometimes you would group your basses with your guitars, etc. So again, this is just on a guitar group on a set of samples from Media Bay. It's not night and day, but it's just bringing a bit more into that, making that a bit more lively, average levels are a bit higher, etc., and putting a bit more character on there with that drive. And overall, I think that's my impression of the Black Valve. It's one of those things where maybe you wouldn't buy it. I don't know, but I think if you've got it, it's one of those things you can put in, and I think I'll probably put it in quite a lot because it does what I want. In certain situations, you know, when you want a bit of flattening out and you want a bit of drive and a bit of character in there, it's going to be pretty good for doing that. So it's not perfect. It's kind of a one-trick pony, but it's pretty good at the trick that it does. One thing I wish it had was a resizable UI, because it's a little lost on my main DAW, I'll be honest, even though obviously the big knob is what you're interested in, strangely. That's just one of those things. It's not too bad because it's only really got 5 controls, and it's not the end of the world. But other than that, I think it's a welcome addition, and it's nice that it's split out separately and you don't have to load up Vocal Chain to get access to the sounds that it's got. As ever, hope you found this video useful, and have a look around at the other Cubase 13 and indeed general Cubase content on the channel. And hopefully we'll see you again soon for more music tech tuition.